Hey, y'all, Zach McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and this is my Seattle Housing Market Watch for June 24th, 2025. Well, day two in the home office studio. We're still working out some kinks, so please, if you have any feedback, I would love it. I want to continue to improve this setup. And as we look at some of the data here this week, something I noticed was an uptick in the new listings again here this week and an uptick in some of the pending sales. So some really good news for the market overall. It's just more inventory. We haven't quite hit the end of the summer rush. We're really just getting into it. And even with the summer coming and people starting to go on vacations, at least this past week was still relatively busy. Now, I would expect that this week, being a little bit of an uptick over the past few weeks, is going to be a little bit of an anomaly as we start to head into the summer. We are likely going to start to see some of the activity from buyers dying down as people are on vacations. But a really quick week over week snapshot here. New listings for King and Snohomish County, 901 new listings compared to 868 the previous week. So a little bit of an uptick, as we talked about in the new listing activity. If we look at a few weeks back, we had 839 pending listings. And if we look at the previous week, 938. So we had more new listings coming on, and we also had more pending sales. Price reductions increased week over week. So we had 707 price reductions in the last week. 2 weeks back, 622. So we're still seeing some of those listings that were maybe priced on the higher side of the value range, seeing a price drop. Some of those might have even been above the value range, and they're maybe getting into that spot, which is also why we might have seen some more pending sales over the past week. Sold listings also up almost 100. We had 587 sold listings a few weeks before. Last week, 671. We are nearing the end of the month as well, so it's normal to see more sold listings. And these would have been pending about a month ago, so not necessarily a predictor or showing us what's happening currently in the market. That would be more the new listings and the pending sales, but good to see more closings as we're nearing the end of the month. And as we've been in this whole entire year, we're still hovering around 7% for the mortgage rates, but something interesting is that we've seen rates coming down here over the past week. If we look at last week's rates, we were right around 6.91 was Mortgage News Daily's survey that we talked about in the update. This week, looking at the survey from 624, we had a rate of 6.82%. And part of that was a response to some comments that were made about rates, the Fed rate. Really, the bonds trading is what we're following, and we're seeing that the trading has been positive for the mortgage rates here over the past week. I would expect that trend to remain similar. We haven't seen any news that should make rates change in any dramatic way at this point, but staying in this upper sixes, low sevens, I would expect that we would stay here until we see some type of mover or news that causes us to see rates going one direction or another. So for now, I don't have anything particularly new to share this week. I think we've seen more new listings coming on the market this week, which is encouraging. I think that we're seeing more pending sales, and so those pending sales are continuing to keep up with some of the new listings coming on the market, but we're still seeing overall in King and Snohomish County more and more inventory building up on the market. And let's look a little bit at the week stats for King County. And as we're seeing, the last week, $999 was the median sales price in King County. Last week, when we looked at the data, $985 from the prior week. So a little bit more over the past week. The average unpublished price remained similar, 98% 2 weeks ago, 98% over the past week. So we're still seeing houses on average selling below asking price versus at or above asking price, like we were seeing earlier in the year. The pending sales with multiple offers, 28% this week versus 27% last week, pretty much the same. The pendings with the escalation addendum, again, a little bit of a indicator of how much competition we're seeing on listings, 11% versus 13%. So overall, the multiple offer scenarios are still down from earlier in the year, stabilizing a little bit in King County, but still 28% in King County with multiple offers. And that's still a pretty healthy percent. And I had a few comments, we were dialoguing a few weeks back about the market and how it's not really a buyer's market yet. And I completely agree. We've been transitioning from a seller's market to a more balanced market. This is not a buyer's market right now in King County, and it's not a buyer's market in Snohomish County, but we're seeing a market that's more equitable for buyers. There's more of a chance some listings, they can actually negotiate a little bit versus everything selling over asking price or at the asking price. So a little bit more of a balanced negotiation that's happening right now. Pendings with financing addendums, 63% last week versus 68% the week before, and 35% of all offers had the inspection addendum versus 38% the week before. Again, this is very similar, but we've been trending down over the year as far as the multiple offers, and we've been trending up in some of these stats, seeing more financing addendums and inspection addendums overall in King County. Let's look at Snohomish County next. And last week, the median sales price was $827,500 in Snohomish County, $807,000 the previous week. So again, a little bit up week over week in Snohomish County, just like King County. 98% of the asking price was our average sales price in Snohomish County last week. The previous week was 99%. And so King and Snohomish County, both cases, 98% of the asking price for the listings that are pending. And that just means we're not seeing everything selling over asking price right now. In fact, we're more often than not seeing houses selling below asking price. So as much as we have some multiple offer scenarios still, we're also seeing even more houses without multiple offers and some negotiations, which again is just more balanced. It's not a buyer's market. It's still probably considered a seller's market if we want to be really technical, but we're trending towards a more balanced market for buyers and sellers in King and Snohomish County. And that trend can be observed with the amount of multiple offers as well. 27% this week, so a little more than last week at 23%. The escalation addendums, pretty similar, 6% last week, 7% this week. Still considerably lower than the weeks that we were seeing earlier in the spring. And then as far as the contingencies, 76% last week and this week for the financing addendum, and 43% and 42% this week for inspection addendum. So again, similar contingencies included, similar amount of multiple offer scenarios, and ultimately pretty similar housing markets week over week. So we're not continuing to see things getting more balanced, but we're also not seeing things trending back towards sellers necessarily. So as we're at the beginning of the summer here, we are seeing more inventory overall, and we're seeing more opportunities for buyers in the market for King and Snohomish County. Thanks so much for tuning in to this week's Seattle Housing Market Watch. If you have questions about buying or selling a home here in the greater Seattle area, whether that's King County or Snohomish County, I'd love to be a resource for you. And if you know somebody who could benefit from this content, please consider sharing it with them.